Hello, it's Miss Gina. I'm sorry, but my park has a lot of interstate noise and car noise today. But I'm going to try to read you Rosa's Bus. It's a story about Rosa Parks and some wonky civil rights laws. Well, they were Jim Crowe laws, not civil rights laws. Those made things better. When bus number 2857 rolled off the assembly line in 1948, no one cheered, no one paid attention, no one knew that one day bus 2857 would be famous. I don't think the bus was famous. I think her stand against something that was so wrong was famous. But they're putting it in the perspective of the bus. So here we go. The bus left the General Motors factory in Michigan and headed for Terre Haute, Indiana, where it carried folks for several years. Kind of in a bind here. I'm in a tunnel. Or I need to be in a tunnel. Before moving south to Alabama in 1954, around the time the bus arrived in Montgomery, the U.S. Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. ruled that separate schools for black children and white children was unequal. The civil rights movement was beginning to roll. Welcome to Montgomery. And they're talking about Montgomery, Alabama. I live in Georgia. By now, bus number 2857 was 6 years old. Its yellow paint had faded some, but inside, 10 seats back, there was a newly painted movable sign. It read colored. It looked like this. White people climbed aboard bus number 2857, paid a dime, and took a seat in the front of the bus. Black people climbed aboard the bus, paid a dime, but often had to walk back down the steps and go to the rear door, even if it was raining, even if their legs were broken, even if they were cold and the steps were hard to climb. That's just the way things were. Doesn't mean they were right. Whites sat up front, colored in back. Black people were called colored back then. That's just the way things were. When the white seats filled, an entire row of black people had to stand up. So one white person could sit down. Black people weren't allowed to share a row with white people. That's just how things were. If black people didn't stand up, the bus driver could have them arrested. And they'd have to pay a fine. Those were the rules, called Jim Crowe Laws. I don't like them very much. That's just the way things were. I think we use that excuse to let things slide. Bus number 2857 traveled the street of Montgomery, carrying people to work, to church, and to the store. Black people, needed the bus. The bus company needed black people to ride. Jingle jangle, dime upon dime. Dimes kept the buses in business. That's really cheap back then to ride a bus, a dime. That's 10 cents. On the evening of December 1st, 1955, a winter day like any other, bus number 2857 chugged along the streets, stopping at corners, brakes screeching, doors hissing. Mrs. Rosa Parks boarded the bus. After a long day of sewing and pressing clothes, she took a seat behind the sign. At the next stop, all the front seats were filled, and a white man was left standing. The bus driver motioned to Rosa and 3 other black passengers in her row to stand up so the white man could sit down. 3 passengers did as the driver ordered. Rosa sat still. You see her on the bus? She's not moving. Too bad we don't have more Rosa Parks in this world. The busload of people moaned and groaned, anxious to get home. The driver said, "Move or I'll have you arrested." Still Rosa sat. That winter day, the police took Rosa to jail. I don't think that's right. She was in her section. Did you hear? Did you hear? Rosa was arrested. The news raced around town like a field of fire. Meetings were held in homes and at churches. Black leaders had been waiting for this moment, waiting for something to happen on the buses, something that would give people the courage to change the way things were. To change the way things were, they printed flyers that read, "Please stay off all buses on Monday." Here they are in church, having a meeting. Or maybe they're just on church on Sunday. On Monday morning, when bus number 2857 pulled up to its first stop, few black faces were among those who climbed aboard. The same was true for every bus in Montgomery. At every stop that day, a bus boycott had begun, led by a young minister named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said, "The great glory of American democracy is the right to protest for right." Black people throughout the city vowed to avoid riding the buses until no one could tell them to move from their seats, because they paid their dime just like everybody else. The bus boycott lasted a week, then a month. Black people walked to work, to church, and to the store, and their feet got sore, but still they walked. Some people who had cars offered rides to others. Black taxi drivers offered special fares until they were stopped by those Jim Crowe laws. The boycott went on and on. No dimes jingle-jangled in the coin box. Day after day, week after week, month after month, bus number 2857 rode down the street with plenty of empty seats. It's almost an empty bus. Look at that. Black people walked and walked, wearing holes in the soles of their shoes. They walked for 382 days. Do you know how many days are in a year? There are 365 days in a year. They walked for 382 days. That's more than a year of walking. That's how long they boycotted the buses. A year after the boycott began, the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. ruled that the way things were in Montgomery must change. Black people could no longer be forced to give up their seats for white people. They could sit in any seat they wanted on the bus. The civil rights movement had won an important victory. So civil rights came in to take place of those Jim Crowe unfair laws that kept them from being able to sit where they like and being made to get out of their seat if a white person didn't have a seat. That's not right. They're back on the bus. Says bus number 2857 was full again. It ran many more years on the streets of Montgomery as the civil rights movement rolled on and on. Then the city replaced its old buses with ones that were shiny and new. Bus number 2857 was put out of service. A man bought the old bus to save it from the junkyard. Summer and winter, year after year, bus number 2857 sat in a field. The engine was ripped out. The windows got broken. Instead of people, the old bus held tools and lumber. A pine tree dripped sap on the roof. Its metal rusted. Bus number 2857 had been forgotten, or so it seemed. Donnie Williams remembered. He owned the bus in the field. Mr. Williams waited half his life, more than 30 years, for the right time. A time when people cared enough about the bus to clean off the sap, scrape off the rust, and replace the broken windows. They're about to fix the bus up. 55 years after it rolled off the assembly line, bus number 2857 returned to Michigan. This time people cheered when the bus rolled into the Henry Ford Museum. Today, bus number 2857, you hear that train, welcomes people of all colors, those who remember the days when they sat behind the sign and those who sat in front. It says it welcomes people who remember the way things were, the people who only have heard the stories. Think about bus number 2857. Imagine where it has been and where we have yet to go. And there's the bus, and it's at the Henry Ford Museum in Michigan. That's where it was built. And it says, General Motors Corporation, Pontiac, Michigan, built March 1948, model number DH3610. I don't think they even make Pontiacs anymore. Serial number 1132, coach identification number 2857, capacity 36 passengers. Engine, diesel engine with hydraulic transmission. Service, Terre Haute, Indiana, 1948 to 1954. Montgomery, Alabama, 1954 to 1971. After the bus was retired from service, it was sold as surplus in 1971 to Roy H. Summerford, who realized its historical value. The bus was inherited by Summerford's daughter and son-in-law, Vivian and Donnie Williams. In 2001, the bus was purchased at auction by the Henry Ford Museum. It took nearly 5 months to restore the bus. A lot of loud cars here. Great care was taken to have the bus look as it did when Rosa Parks held her seat. From the golden paint to the red Alabama dirt on the wheels, on February 1st, 2003, bus number 2857 went on permanent display, diesel truck, at the Henry Ford Museum, Dearborn, Michigan. You can learn more at www.thehenryford.org/exhibits/Rosa Parks, all one word, lowercase, /default.asp. And so anyway, that was a pretty good story. So when you believe in something, you sometimes got to take a stand for what you believe in. And so Rosa Parks did, and they boycotted the bus, and that cost the bus dearly because that was their livelihood. So can you imagine if most of your passengers, or even half of your passengers, didn't ride your bus for a year, how much money and revenue you would lose? So she hurt them in their pocketbook and made a difference. And so the bus went as a historical reminder in the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan, of Rosa Parks' defiance or gutsy chutzpah and keeping her seat. So this has been February, and it's Black History Month, and there was my book about Rosa Parks. I hope you enjoyed that little piece of history right there. So I'll see you next time, because I gotta go play. I'm in the park, of course. It's Friday. Okay, see you next time. Bye-bye.